11 players, one ball, and yet somehow nobody on the pitch is doing the same job. Here's the strange part. Most of football's positions weren't designed in a boardroom. They were invented on the fly, by accident, by rule changes, by one stubborn manager refusing to lose a game he probably should have lost. The names you already know, striker, midfielder, defender, barely scratch the surface of what's actually happening out there. Here's how it actually works. Let's start simple. Every team fields 11 players. One of them stands in a box and is allowed to use his hands. That's the goalkeeper. Everyone else is split roughly into 3 jobs. Stop the other team from scoring, help the ball move forward, and finish the job by scoring yourself. Defense, midfield, attack. That's the whole game in theory. In practice, each of those 3 jobs splits again and again until you end up with a dozen semi-official titles that sound like a spy's alias list. Center back, fullback, holding midfielder, winger, false 9, sweeper keeper. Don't worry, none of it is complicated once you see the logic underneath it. Here's the why. Football has a problem that never goes away. Too much space, not enough players to cover it. A pitch is roughly the size of a city block. 11 people can't stand everywhere at once, so positions exist to solve one question over and over. Who owns this patch of grass right now? Defenders own the space closest to their own goal. Simple job, brutal consequences. Get it wrong, and the ball's in the net. Midfielders own the middle, the engine room. They collect the ball from the defense and decide, often in under a second, whether to keep it or launch it forward. Attackers own the space nearest the opponent's goal. Their job isn't complicated either. Score, or at least make the other team panic trying to stop you. Simple divisions, brutal jobs, no hiding place. Now here's where it gets interesting. The escalation, the bit most explainer videos skip. For decades, positions were rigid. A left back stayed on the left. A striker stayed up top. Then in the 1970s, a Dutch team blew the whole system up. They called it total football. The idea was almost insulting in its simplicity. Any player could play any position at any moment, as long as someone else covered the gap he left behind. A defender could suddenly become an attacker. A midfielder could defend. The team moved like a single organism instead of 11 separate assignments. It worked. It terrified opponents who had spent their whole careers marking a specific job title, only to discover the man in that shirt had wandered somewhere else entirely, and someone new had taken his place. The Netherlands didn't win the World Cup with it, but they changed how everyone else thought about the sport permanently. That's the moment the rigid rulebook cracked. Positions stopped being cages. They became starting points. Which brings us to the twist, the detail most casual fans still miss. When you hear commentators say a player is a false 9, they don't mean he's bad at maths. It means a striker who drops deep into midfield, dragging a defender out of position with him and opening a hole for a teammate to run into instead. The position on the team sheet says attacker. The actual job for 90 minutes might be something else entirely. Same jersey number, completely different assignment depending on the minute, the scoreline, the opponent. Modern football runs on this kind of disguise. A fullback might spend a match tucking into midfield. A holding midfielder might spend it playing like an extra center back. The formation printed in the match program is a rough sketch, not a contract. Whether you like it or not, the label on a player rarely tells you what he's actually doing right now. And you can see it happening in real time at this summer's World Cup. Watch closely and you'll notice teams shifting shape depending on whether they have the ball or not. Defenders pushing high when attacking, then dropping back into a completely different formation the instant possession is lost. Commentators will call it a back 3 or a midfield diamond. What they're really describing is 11 people constantly renegotiating who owns which patch of grass 30 times a game without a single team meeting to discuss it. So here's the whole idea, reassembled. Football splits its 11 players into 3 basic jobs: stopping goals, moving the ball, scoring goals, because nobody can cover the whole pitch alone. Those 3 jobs multiplied into specific roles as the sport evolved, and then, in the 1970s, one Dutch side proved those roles didn't have to be fixed at all. Today's best teams borrow that lesson constantly, blurring positions on purpose because a defense that can't predict where you'll be next can't stop you either. The position on the shirt was never really the point. What each player does with the space around him, that's the actual game. The game didn't change. You did. You're welcome. Subscribe if you like this. It really means a lot.